Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
What's up, everyone, and welcome. In this short episode, we are going to learn a little bit about checking logs using the tail command, the more and subsequent zmore command, the less and zless command, as well as I'm going to use the zgrep. Finish up with the zgrep for searching through if I know a string, what I am looking for. Now, why would you manually want to check logs? There's definitely a bunch of software, a bunch of automated tools to kind of plow through log files and give you some charts and reports about access and things like that. But there are numerous cases where you will need to and want to check your logs manually. For example, if you're doing recon about any new potential scans or searches or sniffers on your platform. I find it gives me a great overview of how resources are being called, and in the case of a website, who is scanning my website. Now, these commands are what I consider strictly read commands. They are read commands, so there is no real risk of deleting any valuable tracking if you make these read commands available. Now, it does depend on your security policies that you have in place for your team or for your organization. If you have a larger DevOps team or DevSecOps team, and you use the least privilege first principles, this task can be done by a team member with, I'll say, medium and above security level access. So if you were to run over and do check the the manual pages for these commands, you would see that the name of the command for tail has in it that it outputs the last part of files. So if I run man tail, got to type under my microphone, you'll see here that's exactly what the name is. Output the last part of files. Specifically, by default, it prints out the last 10 lines of the file that you tack on to the end of the command. Now, I'm showing you the manual page because I want to specifically talk about the option that I use the most, which is the -n. This allows me to enter in a number. And let's say I wanted more than the last 10 lines. I wanted the last 20 or 50. Then I would say tail space -n space and then the number I'm looking for followed by the file. Now, the less command I have here first because it should be your most used command, or the command that you use more than more. Yeah, a lot of mores in there. I found the definition pretty funny. Less is the opposite of more. So if I man the less command, you'll see by definition that less is a program similar to more, but it has many more features. Less does not have to read the entire input file before starting. So with large input files, it starts up faster than text editors like VI. So, other ways of reading files or accessing them really requires you to load the whole file in RAM, which or the buffer, which if the file is extremely large, takes a long period of time. The number of options that also come with it and the functionality of it is much better than more. So if you look at man more, I hope if I spelled it right. So more is a file perusal filter for CRT viewing. The definition specifically is more is a filter for paging through text one screenful at a time. Now, there are ways to to either speed it up or decrease it. The space bar, if you press on the space bar, that moves down the entire screen. So if you resize your screen to, let's say, only have 15 to 20 lines, then each time you hit the space bar, you'll go down 20 lines. If you increased it to allow, let's say, 50, each tap of the space bar would move it down 50 lines. The return or enter key, on the other hand, only moves one line at a time. But going back to the definition, they call this version is especially primitive. It's a very primitive sort of one-use, one-trick pony function. Command, and they specifically say that users should realize that the less command provides more emulation plus extension enhancements. So you should use the less command more and the more command less. Hope that doesn't confuse you, but let's see. So I spun up one of my backup images here, and I'm going to go into the log folder. I'm using Apache 2 on the system, so I'm going to access there. These logs are current. I transferred some current. There's a current backup image of a system. Now, if I were to do tail, I'm actually going to do this one here. I'm going to tail the error log. You'll see there's really nothing, not much in there. All right. So how logs work, in case you're not completely familiar, this is a very brief overview. This file here, so every .log file is in effect the currently used file for storing warnings, information, errors, etc. Logs work generally with rotation. That means after a specific amount of time or specific size of a log, it is rotated. It's basically shift from GESU error log here to GESU error log 1. So the contents are transferred over there, and then this is basically reset to allow it to be filled up again with the new current statuses. So here is the first history file going back X amount of minutes, hours, or days. And then from here, it then turns it into a zip file and iterates up through the process here. You see 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then 2, 3, 4. So that's initially how logs. So if I wanted to go back further in history, and let's say I want to go here, right? If I did tail that, I'm going to get gobbledygook. And I'm getting gobbledygook because this is an archived, a gzipped file, and tail cannot read it. So if I did more, right, because more is allows me to iterate through, I get the same thing. It cannot read it. If I did less, is a binary file. See it anyway, right? So then if I switch to more, I get to see this error log, right? It actually unpacks it and shows it to me on my output. So I want to actually get a little bit deeper to show you some examples of how I kind of iterate through either through more or less. I'm going to use the less on this particular access log, and I'm just going to go through here, and I generally look for patterns. Let me just go back here, enlarge this. So when I'm using these commands, I first know what kind of system I'm on and what services are available and what logs I'm looking at. If I'm looking at syslogs versus web logs, or if I'm looking at like antivirus or fail to ban logs, I kind of know the realm in which I'm working. Secondly, if I take it, for example, websites, right, or web platforms, then I have in my head that this is either an e-commerce platform where I might be looking out for trends or characteristics of somebody trying to scrape products and suck all that data and then either use it on our own website or what have you. And if this is like a forum or your comments, I try to see whether or not the comments are being manipulated or bombarded with spam. So this is. I could do this on the front end. I could do this with applications, but if I'm doing recon and trying to be preemptive and look for new trends, which may not be within these tools that I have yet, then I go directly into my logs, right? So I can look for scanners, I can look for bots, and I could specifically look for vulnerability scanners, which is what I'm going to do here. I know there's one in here. I just need to find it. So I just iterate down, and this is definitely suspicious. A bunch of different IPs addresses calling very similar content right after the other. This here also looks to me like somebody's attacking. Not necessarily, are they looking for vulnerabilities? They're just trying willy-nilly endpoints. Right, this is sort of an endpoint checker to see whether or not they could get to any of these modules. HTML website backup, vendor, Inc. staff is kind of trying to scan through different folders if they exist. So here again, get blog WordPress login. See that? from this IP address. That's a scanner. It's a vulnerability scanner. Now they're trying to see whether or not I have WordPress installed on this system. Oh, I saw it again. See that? This is a perfect example. Here's another IP address: 129.146.40.150. These are all scanners, right? They're vulnerability scanners that are just trying to check and see whether or not they can exploit. Oh, I see what's happening. For some reason, it's copy. They're just trying to exploit, see whether or not I have WordPress installed. I've seen exploits looking for Joomla folder structure, looking for WordPress folder structure, Typo Drive folder structure, CGI scripts to see if they can run Java code endpoints. They're trying to look for. But that should be enough for you to see. You know, it's kind of how you scroll through and scan with. I'm using less right now, zless on a gzipped log file. Just kind of looking for patterns. That should be enough. I saw a couple of IP addresses here that are running vulnerability scanners. Showed it for you. There is an easier way, and this is where the Z grep comes in. And again, the Z before the command is allowing me, basically decompressing the file so that I could read it. So I know that in here there was something. Let's check number 8. Let's check the log file 8 and see if I can find anything with .cgi in the as a string, and I cannot. Can I do it with 7? I cannot. Can I do it with 6? There you go. Look at that. See? Basically, I'm doing a search through this gzipped file for the string .cgi, and I found it twice. So I could say that on May 8th at 15:50, which is 3:50 p.m. local time, on the site, somebody tried to reach an index.cgi, and somebody tried to access cgi.index, and it was IP address 119.29.99.56. This is a different IP address than we saw in the log 7. So if I do zless this log, I can look at the timestamp, and I can just scroll down till I get to 1550. That's 1542. Here's 1550. Look at all this. There's a treasure trove of information for me. So I see they access this IP address, access the robots.txt. Then they go to try test 404 page. Then they look for ismail. Then administrator/manifest/file Joomla. Hey, you know, I said I've seen Joomla. Boom, right? This is a real log. This is from production environment. I see Doxy. I see they tried to see if I have PHP admin installed, Web2 login templates, FCK editor, and I'm sure there's WordPress in here. I'm just positive there's gonna be cute soft client. You know, they're just trying anything that they can in terms of searching for directory structure to allow them to see what kind of system is installed. Once they know what kind of system is installed, if you let's say for example you have a hardened Apache where you're not saying what version of Apache you have. You have a hardened CMS where the CMS doesn't give the version out. You know, these are all things that go within a system, a web-based systems security plan. Should be, at least. Hopefully you guys are doing that. If not, stay tuned. I'm going to be putting out videos of how to harden all of your systems up, so that it makes it more difficult for people to be able to use these types of applications. It involves fail to ban, it involves installing bad bot blockers, and it involves installing regexes to block this kind of stuff. So anybody who tries to scan for something you know you don't have installed, their IP will get blocked. For example, you create a regex where I say anybody who tries to visit cutesoft.client, that IP address gets blocked, because that IP address I know is being used for a vulnerability scanner. So there you have it. we first went through tail, saw how easy it is to check the end of the logs to see like the most recent stuff, right? Then we looked at less, and you could more is the same, although less is a more powerful command. We looked at less to kind of just iterate through and just look for patterns and use our own two eyes to scan that stuff. And then finally we used grep when we knew what we were looking for. In that case it was CGI, a CGI file, which we know we're not running. So if somebody's trying to access that, it gives us a tip that they are trying to find a vulnerability in our system. We then opened up that log, scroll down to the time. So we used grep to see if it was in any of those logs. Once we found it in one of the logs, we used less to open it up, scroll down to that timestamp, and we saw the treasure trove worth of information that we can now use to harden our security and block those types of calls, so that we don't waste those resources. Those resources could be used by a real user, speed up our servers because we're not constantly bombarded with those types of things. So I hope that you learned something in this episode, and if you did, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I'm going to be putting out a bunch more videos, so much stuff going on that I want to make sure that I can pass it on to whoever is interested, and I hope that you continue to join me on this journey of mine, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video. Take care.